Good afternoon. I'm Mark Longenecker, and our group is continuing to pursue the idea of a synthetic sports arena. As we have continued to hone in, trying to define what the product is going to look like, what kinds of services and other features we're going to provide, we determined that a change for name is in order. We're no longer going to be the Extreme E Arena. We now offer the facility Immersion. Over the course of the last few weeks, we've interviewed over 5 gurus, 19 respondents, and reached out to the technological and entertainment type of industry, since that is the aspect that our product requires in reaching out and developing this particular new product. As we look at the business model canvas, the value proposition for the most part as we started this last week has been spot on. Customers do want a way to watch the big game from different venues and different opportunities. If you look at the key partners, one of the ones we did discover was a broadcast network. They spend millions of dollars in broadcasting, having the rights to broadcast the game, and they've been very much against movie theaters who've been trying to gain into this marketplace to be able to broadcast games from their different theaters across the country. But for the most part, if you look at the key activities, key resources, cost structure, revenue streams, and channels, for the most part, they haven't changed very much from last week. But on the far side, under customer segments, we have athlete, the victim of supply and demand, and the tightwad. These customer segments were broken down in 3 different areas. To look at athlete, for example, we were going to look at athlete as a promotional type of vehicle to influence and promote our product, but we were unable to validate our assumptions with follow-on contact. The victim supply demand is really a restatement of our original customer segment and basically focusing on existing customers on the season, basically season ticket waiting list. And for the most part, our assumption was that the financial aspect of the ticket prices was not a factor for the group, but it was primarily ticket availability. And actually, we discovered that was incorrect. Many of the individuals only go to 1 or 2 games, and for the most part, they would not go to more than those games because of the cost of individual tickets. But ironically, they see the perceived value of a season ticket and are willing to pay the higher cost. The tightwad was the economic buyer, and this was kind of a larger group than we initially estimated, and most of the respondents saw price as a major factor for attendance at games. And for the most part, the characteristics of this was not just necessarily lower incomes. We had some of those respondents in the tightwad type of category were earning over $80,000 a year, but they still saw cost as an issue. But if you look at the value hypothesis, many of the inputs we received were considered, and if we saw more than 80% of the respondents indicated they agreed, then we assumed that our hypothesis is likely true. And hypothesis 1 was the only one that were really off on that as far as enough seats being available. Only 6% agreed with that as an issue. 100% on hypothesis 2, the high cost of tickets. 100% of hypothesis 3. As far as just the cost of food and beverages. Hypothesis 4, we're basically upset about the parking, but really didn't raise it as an issue unless we reworded to proximity of parking. If we saw proximity of parking, they increased to almost 87% agreed with this language and not necessarily the lack of parking. Hypothesis 5 showed that most of the respondents said that if we rephrase this just as number 4, that if we said we would consider an alternative such as our product, then that jumped up to 100% agreed with that. But the 100% of the respondents agreed with hypothesis 6, but generally those were those with families. If we look at the guru results, most of the gurus' inputs range from the 1 through 5 gurus range anywhere from providing input as far as how to customize your technology, as far as on the technology and experiences. One of the gurus told us that customer insights for customization is that customers want more control over their experiences no matter what they're doing, whether it's a sport event or other type of activity. But he also cautioned about overdoing it. He says the experience can sometimes compete with your desired intent. Another major issue is that Guru mentioned that there are incidences where customers will pay for additional technology, and he gave a good example of the 3D where they would pay for that. But on the other hand, he mentioned that the theaters attempted, as I stated earlier, to get into this particular segment of the market, but we're getting very much pushback from the NFL as well as some of the other segments, such as the broadcasting networks, because of the infringement they felt on their particular piece of the activity or action within that market. And some of the gurus provided technology limitations, such as size of screens, whether they be curved or flat, up to about 120 inches, I believe, up to about $220,000. And they also recommended possibly researching projection type of format where you can avoid the size screen limitations, as well as the technology has hugely improved in projections. And then another input was basically setting up a fantasy football center within the venue. Since this is such a huge piece of the activity within the NFL, it's includes set up a data access and other computing requirements to be able to support this activity. If you're looking at the guru results and customer responses, there were several interesting data points. When we were looking at the top positive agreements among the gurus, question 1, which was issue with general demographics of your customers look like, and question 6, how important is technological enhancements to your customers, these two questions got over 67% of positive concurrence. The top question on the other side of the pendulum, which got negative agreement, was question 5, what steps do you take to boost sales to customers outside your geographic area? Over 100% of them got a neutral response. As far as customer respondents were concerned, some of the top issues, the hypothesis from a customer perspective was like social interaction. Many told me that they don't go to games by themselves. The social interactions are a big issue. Food and drink prices basically impact their pre-game activities, which often they do at a different location, do the tailgating and so forth, or go to another facility outside the venue to try to save money. And the reasonable parking issue is always a thought as far as distance and cost. And many are trying to use public transportation, light rail, buses, trains, and so forth. Comfortable seating, that was, some of it was a valuable proposition. Many thought of it as a part of the issue. And their comment was, hey, you know what, I can use my own bathroom, I can sit on my own couch if I watch the game on TV. And stadium-like environment was the fact that we want to create something that gives them the social interaction, reasonable parking, food and drink prices, but at the same time not making it too hokey and making it an experience that's really adds a positive enhancement to it without feeling like it's a little bit corny. Saying all that, a couple of the things that we did learn, two additional things, was time investment, which was huge. Many said, especially those with children, that they invest for a 3-hour football game event, they're spending almost an 8-hour day, 2 to 3 hours for pair, packing up, children if it's included, and then commuting depending on your distance, another hour, a couple hours, parking, walking to the venue, and then sitting and waiting for the game to start, and then repeating that process going back. And they were saying that even if the tickets were reduced, they said they still would likely not go because of the amount of time that has to be invested in being able to participate. The other features that the customers mentioned was, for example, one gave me an example in Jacksonville where they went to a live game and they had a red zone screen projection in the stadium. That's the first time they had seen that, and they thought it was awesome, providing video and updates of other NFL games throughout the entire time you're in the stadium watching the game. So the other pieces that respondents mentioned, watching from home, the downside was missing the play-by-play or missing some of the commentary, missing the some of the halftime show that you don't get to normally see when you're watching at home. And when you're looking at customer respondents, we looked at the top 3 type of topics that seem to be uniform across all the data. Was the cost-related issues, which included the cost of the event, parking, food, and time. And then the other piece was the income was less of a factor, but was driven by a single or married with a family. So the income doesn't seem to be as much of an indicator as some of the, if you're married or having family or other adults going with you. The last piece, a big one, was when we were looking at kind of getting a feel for what do you think the value of this kind of a product should be. There were some outliers on the very low end of the cost and some in the much higher, but for the most part, the mid-range around $50 seemed to be the appropriate type of location. As we move forward, we're looking at incredibly exciting for this next week as we come into Guru Interaction again. We have some new gurus that we're going to be interviewing as well as following up on the gurus that we've talked to previously. Some of the gurus that will be coming up for this following week is going to include Representative IMAX Theater Development, the VP of Technology, VP of Marketing, Director, Digital and Emerging Media. All the three of those are from the Seahawks organization, and also the Director of Ticket Sales for the Seattle Thunderbirds hockey team. We're really looking forward to it, and thank you very much.